The Devil's Deal. If you think the truth always wins, you've never been inside a prison like this. Subscribe, like, and stay with us, because what you're about to hear will change the way you see justice forever. They found the file buried deep in the archives of the Massachusetts Department of Corrections, marked confidential, do not disclose. Inside was a single name that sent chills down the spine of every investigator who read it: James Whitey Callahan. To the inmates of Cedar Junction Penitentiary, he was the devil in flesh, a man who smiled as easily as he killed. To the FBI, he was an asset, a source buried inside America's most violent criminal underworld. And to the world outside, he didn't exist at all. In 2016, the prison was a storm of tension. 2 murders in less than a month, both linked to information that had somehow leaked from the warden's office. Someone inside had access. Someone was trading secrets for survival. The name that kept surfacing in the whispers was Whitey's. Whitey Callahan had been a feared Irish mob enforcer on the streets of Boston, but prison had sharpened him into something colder. He moved like a man who owned every inch of his cage. Inmates came to him for protection, guards came to him for favors, and somehow, every time a riot broke out, he walked out untouched. What no one knew was that behind those pale blue eyes he was still pulling strings, not just in prison but outside it. Detective Sarah Monroe was the first to suspect him. She'd spent a decade tracking organized crime, and when bodies started dropping both inside and outside the prison walls, she noticed one pattern. Every victim had crossed paths with Callahan at some point. But when she requested his transfer records, something strange happened. Her access was denied. Twice. Even her FBI liaison told her to let that one go. But Sarah didn't let go. She visited Cedar Junction herself, sitting across the bulletproof glass from Callahan. "You've been busy," she said, sliding a crime scene photo across the table. A man, his throat slit, found in a safe house in South Boston. Whitey smiled. "You think I did that from in here? Maybe you should ask your bosses who gave him protection in the first place." It was then that Sarah realized Callahan wasn't afraid of the system. He was the system. He had deals in place so deep that the people meant to keep him locked away were the same ones giving him freedom in exchange for information. He fed them crumbs, half-truths about rival gangs, about drug pipelines, just enough to make himself useful. But behind every arrest he helped them make, someone loyal to him climbed higher. As weeks passed, more evidence came in. Callahan's name appeared in FBI reports, but not as a suspect, as a confidential informant. The Bureau had been protecting him for years, even as his information led to deaths. And then, just when Sarah thought she'd cornered him, a guard at Cedar Junction was found dead in his car, shot twice, execution style. The security footage was missing. The only copy of the file had been accessed from an FBI terminal. Sarah's instincts screamed that the killing wasn't random. Someone was cleaning up, erasing trails that led back to Callahan. But when she tried to reopen the case officially, her captain told her flatly, "The Bureau said stand down. He's untouchable." Untouchable. That word haunted her as she drove home that night. Because she knew men like Callahan didn't just outsmart criminals, they outsmarted the law itself. And somewhere, buried in the heart of the deal he made with the FBI, was a truth darker than murder. Then, one stormy night, Sarah got an encrypted email from an anonymous source. It contained a single photo, Callahan standing in a dark hallway, shaking hands with an FBI agent. The timestamp, 2 days after his supposed imprisonment. Her hands trembled as she stared at the screen. If Whitey Callahan was in prison, then who the hell was the man sitting behind those bars? The ghost in the system. They called it the Cedar Mirage, a whispered theory among correctional officers that the man in cell block D wasn't who the records claimed. But for Detective Sarah Monroe, it wasn't a rumor anymore. The encrypted photo she'd received showed the impossible: Whitey Callahan walking free, 2 days after his official booking. She printed the image and stared at it under the dim light of her desk. The FBI agent beside Callahan was Special Agent Raymond Coyle, a man with decades of service and a spotless record. Coyle had been her contact, her federal connection in the case. And now he was in the same photo as the devil himself. The next morning, Sarah drove back to Cedar Junction. Her badge barely got her through the gate. Word had spread that she was poking around too much. She walked down the echoing corridors toward the high-security wing. The walls seemed to hum with tension, the air thick with the smell of sweat, bleach, and secrets. When she reached Callahan's cell, he was sitting calmly on his cot, reading a newspaper 3 days old. He looked up, grinned, and said, "Detective Monroe. You've been busy." Sarah didn't smile. She slid the printed photo through the bars. You want to explain this? Whitey glanced at it, his grin widening. I could. But then you'd stop sleeping at night. Who's that in the picture, Whitey? She pressed. He leaned forward, eyes glinting. You think I'm the only one who made a deal with the devil? You think this place runs on justice? No, sweetheart. It runs on leverage. Sarah's pulse quickened. You mean Coyle? He chuckled low. Coyle's just one of many. You see, when you've got dirt on the right people, prison becomes optional. They needed a body in here named Whitey Callahan. So they found one. Sarah's stomach twisted. A body? He shrugged. Guy's name was Danny Kearns. Low-level thief. Looked close enough. They put him in here under my name, gave him a deal he didn't live long enough to enjoy. He died a year later in a fight that wasn't supposed to happen. She stared at him, stunned. You're saying the real Whitey Callahan is still out there, and you're not him? Whitey smiled faintly. I'm saying there's no such thing as the real Whitey Callahan anymore. There's just whoever the system says he is. Before she could press further, the warden appeared, 2 guards at his side. Detective Monroe, he said stiffly, your access here is officially suspended. Federal orders. Sarah froze. What orders? From who? He hesitated. Agent Coyle. Her blood ran cold. Coyle knew she had the photo. That night, Sarah's phone rang at 2:17 a.m. A distorted voice whispered, they know you saw the file. You need to leave town. Then silence. The line went dead. She traced the number. It was from a payphone 2 blocks from FBI headquarters. The next morning, Agent Coyle called her personally. His tone was smooth, professional, but his words chilled her. Sarah, you've been working too hard. Take a few days off. And delete anything you found on Callahan. Some files aren't meant to see daylight. She played along. Sure, I'll do that. But she didn't. Instead, she met an old reporter friend, Mark Dalton, a crime journalist who'd been blacklisted after exposing an undercover DA operation years earlier. She showed him everything, the emails, the photos, the inconsistencies in Callahan's file. Mark's eyes widened. This isn't just corruption, he said. This is a ghost pipeline. Fake prisoners, stage transfers, informants vanishing. The Bureau's been running black deals for years, trading time served for silence. Before they could plan their next step, a news alert hit Sarah's phone. FBI agent Raymond Coyle found dead, apparent suicide. Mark looked at her. You think it's real? Sarah shook her head slowly. No. It's clean up. 2 days later, a brown envelope arrived at her apartment with no return address. Inside was a single flash drive. It contained hundreds of files, surveillance videos, wiretap logs, transaction records. The metadata pointed to one name again and again, Whitey Callahan. And in one of the clips, shot from a hidden camera, Sarah saw him, older, thinner but unmistakable, shaking hands with a man in a dark alley. The man turned and for a split second the camera caught his face. It was the current FBI director. Sarah's heart pounded as the screen flickered to black. The deal wasn't just made in prison. It was made at the very top. The devil walks free. Smash that like button if you've ever trusted the system. The host's voice echoed faintly in Sarah's head. It was her own sarcastic joke from a year-old podcast episode. Now, sitting in her dark apartment with the blinds drawn, she realized the irony. She had trusted the system. And it was eating itself from the inside. The flash drive was a map of rot. Every folder exposed another name. Judges, prosecutors, even wardens, all linked through a shadow network of deals that moved money, erased charges, and relocated ghosts. Whitey Callahan wasn't an inmate anymore. He was the face of a system that no longer needed bars to control people. Mark Dalton had gone silent 3 days ago. His last message to her was only 4 words, "They know about you." She hadn't heard from him since. His apartment phone rang unanswered, his car still parked out front. She didn't need confirmation to know what that meant. The FBI had closed the case officially. False reports and internal miscommunication, their statement read. Agent Coyle's death was ruled suicide. Callahan's file was locked and classified. Sarah's badge was suspended for mental exhaustion and conduct review. But that night, while replaying the last clip on the drive, she noticed something strange. In the corner of the alleyway scene, where Callahan shook hands with the FBI director, a sign was visible for half a second. Marlowe Shipping Company, Terminal 7. A real place. A real clue. Sarah drove there under cover of fog. The docks were empty except for a single warehouse, its lights dim, humming with the sound of generators. She broke the padlock and slipped inside. The air reeked of oil and dust. Rows of shipping containers lined the space, most labeled as confidential evidence. She cracked one open and froze. Inside were rows of manila folders. Dozens. Hundreds. Each with a name, a mugshot, a red stamp that read, transferred. She opened one. It was Danny Kearns, the thief Callahan said had died in his place. Except according to this file he was still alive. She flipped through more files. Every inmate marked transferred was officially dead or missing. And all were connected to the same internal authorization code, XC1, signed by multiple federal agencies. Footsteps echoed behind her. "Didn't I tell you to delete the files, Detective?" Agent Coyle's voice. She turned slowly, her flashlight shaking. He was alive. But his face looked pale, thinner, a scar ran across his jaw. "They said you were dead," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "That's the point. When you work for the devil you don't retire, you disappear." "Where's Callahan?" she demanded. Coyle stepped closer. "You don't get it, Sarah. Callahan isn't a man anymore. He's an idea, the perfect informant. Every time one deal ends, another begins. You kill one ghost, the system builds two more." Sarah clenched her fists. "You built this monster." He shook his head. "No. We all did. You think corruption starts with money? No. It starts with fear. Everyone's afraid of losing control, politicians, agents, cops. So we make deals. Little compromises. Until the truth doesn't matter." She lifted her phone, recording him. "You're confessing, Ray?" He chuckled softly. "You think anyone will believe it? By the time you upload that I'll be gone. And you'll be the one branded unstable." He turned toward the exit. "But don't worry, Detective. Your story won't end here. It'll end when the system decides it does." A sharp click echoed, the sound of a detonator. Red lights blinked above her. Sarah dropped the phone and ran. The explosion tore through the warehouse, fire licking the sky, scattering papers and ashes like confetti of forgotten names. Hours later, rescue crews found nothing but twisted steel and melted containers. The files were gone. But one object was recovered from the debris, Sarah's charred phone, still recording. The final seconds captured Coyle's voice saying, "The devil doesn't live in prison. He runs it." A week later, an encrypted email appeared in several journalists' inboxes worldwide. No sender. No trace. It contained a single attachment, the same flash drive Sarah had found, and a short message. "Justice is not blind. She's been bought." The story spread like wildfire. Congressional hearings, denials, conspiracy theories. But buried among the chaos, one anonymous photo appeared on the dark web, a grainy CCTV image from a gas station in Nevada. A man in a gray hoodie stood by a payphone, half turned toward the camera. The facial recognition data tagged him at 98% certainty. Whitey Callahan. Still alive. Still free. And the system? Still making deals with the devil.